When the woman found out she had cancer, she was in bed. She reached for the phone on the nightstand and passed it over her body to the right ear. For some reason, when she spoke on the left while laying down, people gave the same response. "I can't hear you anymore," they'd say. And every now and then she used this as a reason to hang up and fall back into the pillows and herself. Something about the left side of her body scrambled cellular lines, the woman thought. It was interesting because a childhood friend and her invented a saying as they moved into the realm of adulthood. The woman didn't remember when they came up with it or what exactly the context was upon creation, but she knew it had something to do with the panic that came with perusing one's existence and something else to do with being a girl who turned into a woman. She knew that somehow being able to say, I'm on the left today was important. The left was representative of a place people went inside of themselves, a place that caused fear, angst, and sometimes revolution. She knew that simply texting those 4 words meant there would be a response, and even if the depth of what was really going on inside her mind wasn't understood, there would be one person who would relate to the girth of it, because they knew what it meant to be on the left too. 1 month after the day she was told she had appendiceal cancer, 1 long month of being on the left every day, she found herself in the hospital with 5 more scars on her belly, 3 feet of her insides removed, and a wound vac pulsing right below the heart. The nurses told her she had to walk today. The catheter was removed and it was time to fly through the sky like an angel in heat. This isn't what the nurse said, but it's what the woman was thinking about when someone came in to interrupt her mind's work for a discussion about walking. What did it mean to be in heat, the woman thought? For your body to change like the colors in a light stream, for parts of you to fly through the sky while the rest stayed on the ground, sifting through dirt. What if the heat inside us had nothing to do with birth and everything to do with angels? Angels weren't something the woman usually thought about, but Ramona, the patient on the other side of the curtain, the patient she shared a room and a toilet with for 5 days, the patient who was 94 years old and spoke Spanish, the patient who had a son, a daughter-in-law, and a cancer, had priests in and out of her room in the night, so when the woman woke up on most days, she found herself thinking about religious ordinance. Somehow on this particular morning, religious ordinance brought her to angels in heat. The heat part was more likely due to being a 39-year-old woman who wondered what it was like to go through the pains and pleasures of pregnancy. Now, laying there in this hospital room with 97-year-old Ramona, having had 3 feet of her insides cut out, no one coming to bring them back to her in a cute little blanket filled with the life that grew in her womb, the woman wondered if she'd ever feel heat again. Her first inclination was to send a message to her childhood friend that said, "I'm on the left, help." But she couldn't do it because she realized the saying wasn't meant for hospital beds and cancer. There weren't cellular lines to help her scramble the voices here. The woman's partner was in the room staring at her. He clearly said something she missed while she was deep within the crevices of her insides. "Hello, where are you?" he sang, as he put his hand on her arm. "It's time to walk." When she came out of herself and saw him, heard his voice, she had a momentary flash to a version of life where she'd just given birth. She envisioned him reveling in the power of her body, the invigoration of birth all over his face like the blood that kept their baby alive. This is the only way she would have imagined their partnership in a hospital room before. When her eyes came into focus, she saw him looking at her with pain and worry, using the voice he used when he was trying to make her laugh, a voice that seemingly hid the fear within. The woman saw him, the flesh and truth of his inside seeping through, the vastness of his humanity filling the room like the song of a baby's first cry, the palatable smell of metal waste bins and empty syringes. She put her head in her hands, wanting to hide her tears. "I can't walk," she said. "I'm not ready. It hurts too much." Her partner leaned in and put his forehead to hers, something they did by mistake one time that somehow became a thing. When she closed her eyes and felt his skin against hers, she pictured naked angels flying with the voices of sirens, gold dripping from their crevices and covering their turquoise and emerald bodies in a magical shimmery mist. All of a sudden, they stopped flying and stayed motionless in a circle around her and her partner's head. She could feel their stares, the heat rising from their insides and surrounding her like the blanket that surrounds the newly born baby. When they were gone, she pulled away from her partner and said, "Let's walk." She had no idea that upon trying to walk for the first time, she'd once again run into the concept of lefts. She closed her eyes as her partner helped her go to a sitting position on the side of the hospital bed. The messy braid her hair was in fell across the middle of her breast, and she could feel her hospital gown separating in the back, air wrapping around her incisions. The wound back continued to pulse, but the pulse felt more like a stab in an upright position, reminiscent of a heart that was trying to kill her. She could hear Ramona's son entering on the other side of the curtain, while her partner moved her pole, her bags, and her wires closer to her. "Hola, mi amor," Ramona's son said, and the sound of dry, tired kisses rose to the ceiling while the woman rose to her feet. She stood hunched over, holding onto a metal pole as if it was a life force. The woman would never forget that moment because it was the first time in her life she knew she couldn't escape. She fractured a bone in her foot when she was younger, but then she could crawl or hop out of a room, move quick enough to hide beneath the bed or behind a curtain. Now she was stuck in limbs and muscles that didn't work, stuck in the realization that death was in her, some kind of gene mutation her body and her mind created. She couldn't imagine feeling stuck in something so beautiful, a symbiotic river of power and life, a luminescent shell holding everything she knew to be her, stuck in a womb pulsating blood and nutrients to her emotions, her mind, her heart, stuck in a sensory being that glows with ecstasy when others touch it, peruse its crevices, fondle its curves, lick its paws, breathe its scent, taste its pleasure. How could this vessel that holds all the mystery, all the beauty, all the secret worlds of the woman, all the whispers, all the dreams, all the characters, all the philosophies, all the empathy, and all the fucking love, how could this place she worshipped, this place she learned to treasure so much so that she carved her entire life around it, the choice not to get married again, the choice not to yearn or plan for children, the choice to build a sanctuary around this body, this constantly evolving root entangled with the vastness of the universe, the choice to allow those who want to come, those who want to leave, knowing there will be at least one who stays most of the time, who becomes a part of all of it, who builds outward with this body, this mind, this vessel of mine. Her partner brought her back again. "Hey, are you with me? We can do this, you know." With his help, she pushed the pole and moved one foot in front of the other again and again until they were in enough of a rhythm that she could go back to the angels, back to the left where she'd been residing quite permanently now. How could the death be in her? She'd thought of every other possibility. She thought about the murder, the random rape, the torture, the wild beast fighting through her flesh while she walked through morning dew, the woman napping because she was no longer a kid, no longer a girl stuck in a car alone. She thought about the human hands pushing her in front of the train as it rushed in. She thought about the bridge collapsing while she was driving across, the explosion riddling through the subway tunnels, and the being alive for a few hours buried beneath the city and the people, buried beneath the breath of others. She thought about the plane going down, smashing through a mountain range, or into the infinite winter ocean, a place where sharks lay. She thought about the sharks all the time, piercing her flesh between the coast of Cape Cod and Martha's Vineyard, rising up from the dark harbors of Penobscot Bay, tearing through her leg where the two rivers fall into the Pacific on the Mexican coast, grabbing her while she learned to surf in Ecuador, being dragged by a kite like bait in Brazil, skinny dipping under a moonlit sky with a lover in Colombia, naked with Bachita, the sound of their breasts slapping against the waves as the sun rose from the Caribbean Sea. She figured it would happen one day. When she was little, it was always in the nighttime. She pictured a man under the bed with a knife, waiting to stick it through the wooden slats, piercing the mattress, pulling the feathers that didn't exist into her body, turning her into a bird that flies amongst the stars. The man smiled while he did it, and she shivered beneath the covers, holding them tight as if they could save her when he came. As she got older, it was sleeping in all those different apartments, houses, and huts. She imagined the walls dissipating when the night came, their bodies vulnerable, seen by the ghosts of those who entered before them. A snake would slither in from the wilds, the kind of snake that takes birds from their nests and swallows them whole. Only the feminists would wave goodbye. They'd do it with colorful scarves from all the open windows across the world. It was amazing that she imagined these scenarios so many times and none of them ever happened to her. The woman convinced herself it was these thoughts that kept her alive, predicting the danger before it had time to creep in, outsmarting the gods and goddesses who reveled in the power of surprise. When she crossed the street, she pictured the truck smashing her to the ground, the head she used to see in the mirror splattered across the ugly flat pavement. It would be so much better if it was a dirt road, she'd think, and she'd walk across unscathed, traffic moving like light around her, protected by stories, shielded by fantasies and fiction. She never thought about what it would be like if the death was in her. Her feet came back into focus, and she moved one hand to her belly, holding it so it didn't have room to shake with her. "How are you doing?" her partner asked. "Fine," she said. "Do you want to go to the rec room and get some tea or sit in a different aesthetic for a while?" "No," she said. "I want to go back to my room. I can't walk anymore." "Okay, we're getting close, just a little bit further." She noticed a photograph of a mother and a child sitting in a field of flowers. The mother wasn't smiling, though. Her face was resting, and the child sat beside her, mimicking her stillness. Her partner told her to stop in front of it for a moment. He wanted to grab a coffee and needed the nurse to watch her while he did. The picture of the mother and her child turned blurry, and the woman was back inside herself. How could this vessel that she put so much into be the murder and the violence, the death and the meal, she thought? How could this vessel be the monster she'd secretly and methodically been preparing for? How could this vessel with all these roots and all this imagination and all this beating, screaming love be the thing she had to fear most? When her partner came back, she looked at him and he looked at her. "You're doing great," he said. "We're almost at the halfway point." When they started walking again, the woman looked at her feet, elbows and forearms resting on the rim around the metal pole now, barely holding herself up in a hunched-over position. "I hate this," she thought. They can't know how much it hurts. One foot in front of the other, over and over again, until she knew they'd do it without her. When she looked up, she could see the door that would lead her back to bed. The number 223B was getting close enough to read. She turned to her partner in pain, moving slower and slower as she got closer. "I never thought I'd be like this in front of you," she said. "Be like what?" he said, with one hand in the small of her back and the other holding one of the unruly wires that kept getting stuck beneath her wheels. "You never thought you'd be this beautifully human?" This time she didn't feel tears rising due to his sweetness. She felt shame, she felt anger, the kind of shame and anger that made her want to tell him he should walk, not her. Walk away as quickly as he could. It would only get uglier from here. Forget walking. Walking was for people like her. He could run. He could do the escaping she couldn't do anymore. Just as she was about to tell him, just as she was about to make herself look sadder than she already felt, she heard this loud rattling getting closer and closer to her. And all of a sudden, a gray-haired man, double her year in age, with a Swedish accent said, "Passing on the left," and whizzed by with his pole and the rickety wheels dragging behind him, trying to keep up with his vigor. She stopped, looked at her partner, and they both broke out in uncontrollable laughter. The kind of laughter that caused unbroken people to lose their breath, but she was broken, and it wasn't her breath she lost, it was everything inside of her crashing together at once. An explosion of pain so sharp and so real, she shrieked loud enough for the nurses to hear her and come running. "Stop laughing," she said, "please," in some kind of whisper scream. "I can't, it hurts too much, stop, please." Her laughter turned to tears as the pain pulsed through and up and all the way to her brain. This must be what it feels like to give birth, she thought. When she finally got control of herself again, she looked at her partner, and instead of telling her partner to run from her, she thanked him for being with her during one of the lowest moments of her life. The moment a gray-haired Swedish man, double her age, outran her in the cancer ward. For a split moment, it made her think. Maybe there was something positive about being on the left after all. Maybe she needed to spend more time there instead of less. It was this idea of spending more time on the left that woke with the woman. There's a time nobody knew about, a time when the woman was a child, a time when she was running barefoot in a boatyard screaming for rusty nails along hot pavement, a time when air smelled like salt water, clams, and sawdust, a time when the counting of things in nature was loud and meditative. Whenever she arrived at this time, she'd open the windows and breathe in. The sound of water slapping against wood flew through the crevices in her lips, the wind slamming and saltering past channel markers, moorings, and the flags that hung off the backs of boats lifted her eyelids, opening her wider than children were supposed to open. Some things whipped while others rang, but all the sounds resonated deep, so deep no fishing line or jiver could find them. A time when these sounds and all the sounds in the world came together inside her body and mind, slipping beneath her pores and into the blood, leaving only trails of salt behind. She'd lick her shoulders, tasting the leftover kernels of the sea, and then she'd begin to run, stubbing her toes in the ridges of floating driftwood, memorizing the names of boats as she went. A time when she counted large bubbles of Cordovan-looking seaweed waiting for the eels to gather under the wooden bridge, belly down against the hot slabs, hinges shaking with the rising tides as people stepped over her child, not knowing what lay beneath their feet. A time when she went up and down every floating dock, counting the jellyfish like a sacristan of water, wood, and the life forms that hid beneath both, collecting the majestical movers so they could all meet where the dock ended and invent imaginary worlds together. A child's church involved all the creatures, boundless worlds where children could walk on water and jellyfish could talk, never leaving them alone with the loudness of their little kid insides, never leaving her with the whipping and the ringing, never leaving her with the silence that rose with the sun. Eventually she learned to row the rubber dinghy and float between the boats, talking to herself in whispers, measuring the rising vibrations of her own muzzled sounds. The way a whisper resonated inside the mind could be confusing to a child. Whispers, said to be quiet, sounded eerily loud on the inside. How long did it take her child to learn the difference between the inside and the outside? One as deep and mysterious as the sea, and the other right in front of her like those rusty nails waiting to be stepped on. Back then, her insides were untouched and moist like a hidden acre amidst millions of other acres, eventually unraveling into a country of natural formations and unpolluted oceans. She'd float until she got so far it seemed impossible to get back. She'd look to see how much further she'd need to go to leave the land behind, a place where the wind had nothing to slap against, a place where all the energy contained in the invisible force of air would circle around her until there was nothing but in and under. What would it sound like when the wind stopped whipping through the crevices of her lips beneath the bloody underside of her eyelids? Would she hear the jellyfish then? What larger entities lay that far from the docks, away from the pupils of children and the sound of dry wood cracking on the surface as she walked? A time when the vastness of the universe was right in front of her, like the vastness of water and wood on those hot summer days. A time when she heard and felt it all, but didn't have the words to express it as it happened. A time when whispers contained the force of an unblocked wind, and silence was only found on the floor of seas beneath the weight of all the water and all the wood. What the woman feared most was forgetting her child, forgetting the truth of boatyards and sawdust, forgetting to lay down and watch the eels beyond the whiskey. Thank you.